Greetings, fellow TV lovers, and welcome back to Ramblings, an unrepentant geeking podcast. As always, I am your host, Shaun and woof, it's been a while, hasn't it? Not that I've been slack in producing content in general. Indeed, this is turning into my busiest October since, well, last October. But yeah, it's been a while since I've actually done a full-on episode of Ramblings. What can I say? I had a lot of other things going on, and, well, here we are. So, since it's been a while, let's just dig right into it, and I'm here to talk, as I often do on Ramblings, and as I hope to do regularly going forward from this point on, about television. It is a thing near and dear to my heart, your heart, so many people's hearts on this planet. So, let's talk about what's been going on with TV this season to date. First, I'm just going to do some general talk on TV in general, look at some of the new shows and some of the returning ones, before digging into in a little bit more depth the big superhero premieres this week, plus Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But before we get to that, let's talk the rest of TV. One of the reasons, actually, that I've waited so long to do this episode was because I wanted to give shows, in most cases, several episodes. Whether returning or new, I wanted to give them a chance to really establish themselves because, frankly, it can be hard to judge the long-term or even the short-term viability of a TV series from one episode alone, especially if that episode is a pilot, because pilots are often, if not just bad, they're often at very least not indicative of where the show may be going, as I will get to in a little bit. So, yeah, I've tried to give shows a number of episodes, but before we get to the new stuff, let's check back in with the bane of my existence last year, Gotham. 3 episodes into the new season, what do I think? I think Gotham is still Gotham. I will admit the first couple episodes of the season showed an admirable amount of, shall we say, restraint and focus relative to Gotham. I mean, not in terms of actual other shows that are competent and know what they're doing, but just compared to what the fuck Gotham was last season when it was an unholy, endless, roiling mess of crap. Now, it's a more straightforward mess of crap. But the operative word there is still crap, because Gotham is still not a good show, and frankly, at this point, I don't think it's ever going to be a good show. And while the first 2 episodes, at least, showed some signs that the creators had learned from their mistakes, that they were moving away from the past, that they were giving the show an actual proper focus, that all came crashing down in episode 3, where we got the big plot twist, which I won't spoil here if you haven't seen it yet, but basically somebody answered the phone because I fucking called it. I said all along, you-know-who wasn't going to be who the show was teasing us to think he was, because frankly, not even Gotham. Well, no, actually, because frankly, they've been playing it so hard, especially in the trailers up to the season, that you-know-who would be you-know-who. Well, this is Gotham, a show that thinks it's smart, but is really incredibly stupid. So, of course, they think they're being clever by making us believe you-know-who is going to be you-know-who, and it turns out, no, he isn't. To the shock of, well, not me, but apparently a lot of other people, if I'm judging social media and Twitter correctly. But I mean, really, people, did you really think, okay, spoiler, if you don't want to be spoiled for the most recent episode of Gotham, jump ahead a couple minutes. Otherwise, did you really think he was going to be the Joker? Come on. Even Gotham isn't that stupid. I mean, okay, the kid was probably the best part of the show, at least this season, and yeah, that's a problem now that they've killed him off, but still, and he was doing an okay combination impression of bits of Cesar Romero and Heath Ledger, with a little bit of, I guess, of occasionally Mark Hamill thrown in. He was fine. He would actually make a perfectly decent Joker, but there was no way in hell this kid was going to actually turn out to be the Joker, because that would be ridiculous. Thankfully, he isn't, but I do think it was a mistake to kill him off this soon, because basically Gotham has traded one of their better characters to build up Blandy McBlandbad, who has no charisma and is about as interesting as, well, white bread that hasn't been toasted. Which, you know, I like white bread and all, but I'm not going to get that excited when I just see a slice of it lying out on the ground, and that's what our new big bad is. His sister is far more interesting, but nope, he's the focus, and Yeah, Gotham just remains a terrible show. I mean, I could go on and on about how, oh, look, there's Jim Gordon, who's supposed to be our moral paragon. But, I mean, the whole point is supposed to be him conflicted, and will he cross the line, except he's regularly throwing people out windows. So, yeah, he already crosses the line all the time. And, oh, look, there's Alfred, who's supposed to be the Rock, who's supposed to be this guy taking care of an already incredibly traumatized kid. Instead of treating the kid after a yet even more traumatic experience, is busy worrying about getting laid. I mean, real good surrogate parenting there, Alfred. Top notch. Clearly, you are the man meant to raise Bruce Wayne. No wonder he turns into a lunatic. Gotham is bad, and I am done. I promised a few people I would give its second season a chance. I gave it 3 episodes. The first episode, I was mildly entertained, which is more than I ever was with anything last season, but I still wasn't impressed. Second season, I started to see the cracks showing up. Second episode, I started to see the cracks showing up again. Third episode, the cracks are full-born. We get a lot of the usual Gotham time wasting, the pointless, uninteresting procedural stuff that just drags this show down. And it proves that while it may be a bit more focused this season, underneath it all, the rotten core remains, and I'm done. Maybe I'll check back in later in the season, but I'm done regularly watching this crap, and don't ask me anymore, okay? If you do, I'm just going to ignore you. Nobody can say, I watched the entire first season, I've watched 3 episodes of season 2, I am done with this show making me miserable. Let's all move on with our lives and be happier people for it. Okay, so that's Gotham out of the way. Let's talk about some new stuff. Since we were on the topic of procedurals, let's address a couple of the wacky procedurals we've gotten this year, because that seems to be a growing trend. Let's begin with Minority Report. And that's Minority Report, and all I have to say... No, okay, I'll say a little bit more. Minority Report is terrible. I mean, in its own way, it might be technically better than Gotham, but at least Gotham is at times a mildly interesting mess to watch. Minority Report is just boring, and it's really frustrating for me, because if I ever, at gunpoint, was forced to make my own top 10 all-time film list, which would be very difficult for me, because I've watched a lot of movies, and I love a lot of movies, and that list in my head constantly changes. But okay, if I ever had to make that list, I guarantee you Minority Report, the film, would be on it. I can't say what spot it would get in the top 10, but it would definitely be on it. And probably high up. I love the movie. But even as an uber fan of the film, I can tell you right off the bat, we didn't need this. Minority Report was not screaming out for a television follow-up, and especially not a television follow-up that seems to take the exact opposite tact of the movie, that seems to ignore the entire driving idea behind the film, and it's a generic procedural, only with a few sci-fi elements thrown in. And unfortunately, they're not particularly interesting, and honestly, I don't even know why I'm still talking about this, because even if Minority Report was the greatest show since Firefly, or whatever, it wouldn't matter, because it's dead. No, really, and this is not just a Fox thing. Go look at the ratings for Minority Report. Seriously, look at the ratings. Nobody would be keeping this show on. Nobody. Minority Report is a dead show walking, and I think the only reason it's still airing right now is because these days Fox tends to like to let things air out just so they don't completely waste their money, although even they may soon be reaching their limit with this thing. I mean, yeah, Minority Report has no real reason to exist except for the fact that it's an attempt by Fox to undo the mistake they made years ago when they canceled Being Human, which was a far, far better take on the futuristic cop procedural than Minority Report will ever be. It had a much better cast, for one thing. It had a more interesting setup, and by the end of its first and sadly only season, it was turning into an interesting little show. Minority Report will never be interesting. Maybe, if given enough time, and given enough effort, and given enough work, maybe it could turn into something decent. But frankly, that's iffy at best, and I won't blame Fox if they don't want to bother putting in that time and effort, because what would be the point? The world is never going to lack for procedurals, and Fox in particular will continue to do these wacky procedurals on a regular basis, and so Minority Report will come and go, and no one will be particularly affected. Alright, let's talk about one of probably the biggest hit in terms of new shows for this year, and Yeah, this has been a pretty bad fall for new shows. Really, this has just been very lackluster, mediocre, with a few exceptions that I will get to, but okay, Blind Spot. It's the big hit so far. It's okay. I mean, it's better than Minority Report, and it's better than Gotham, but I'm not convinced I'm going to stick with it long term. I'm mildly interested because I love the actress. I love Jamie Alexander. I just think she's terrific, and sometimes that's enough to get me to stay with a show. Just a couple of actors that I like, and for example, that is the primary, if not only reason I am watching NCIS LA and NCIS New Orleans on a regular basis. And yes, I admit it, I watch them. I often need to have things in the background, and they're good background shows. Plus, I will probably watch any show that features both Scott Bakula and CCH Pounder. Yes, I always have time for those two, and when they're in a show together, plus I have a soft spot for New Orleans. I like shows that are set in it. I appreciate the fact that, unlike other series, they're actually shooting it on location, so that gives it a bit more personality. They're not great shows. They're better than the main NCIS, which I don't really watch anymore. I tape it occasionally, and I guess I watch the occasional big episode, but not of any passion. It's one of those things that gathers dust on the DVR for a while, and generally I just end up erasing a bunch of things. I save it in case there ever comes a time when I just need a lot, where I'm going to need something on in the background and I've run out of everything else. It's my emergency backup background show, and oftentimes I just delete whole sets of episodes without ever watching them. I'm a little bit more regular when it comes to NCIS LA and New Orleans. That is my secret shame. Not that I am actually ashamed. The shows amuse me. They're not great shows. They're not groundbreaking shows, but I have room in my life for a number of fun procedurals, and those two happen to amuse me largely because of their cast. Blind Spot, less so, because it's one of those tricky mystery shows, and it's one where the mystery is probably, the resolution isn't going to be that satisfactory. And frankly, the show itself in the first episode was asking, why would somebody go to all this trouble? And yeah, why would somebody go to all this trouble? And when you're having the show itself acknowledge that problem, well, that's the thing. I like Jamie Alexander a lot. I will give the show credit. I thought the most recent episode revealed stuff that I didn't think it would reveal anytime soon. It just straight out answered it, apparently. And so maybe it's going to eventually develop into something a little more interesting. Maybe I'll stick around for that. More likely, I'll probably drop it for now and then come back later on if I hear good things about it. Let's talk about the new wacky procedural that is probably my favorite of the new bunch, and that's Limitless on CBS. It's been another hit. I mean, it's a relative hit. It's not going to be the next Empire or anything, but 3 episodes in, it has not dropped in ratings. It has actually seen a slight rise, and its initial rating is pretty decent, especially considering when it's on. And yeah, that's enough that if it continues along this way, if it doesn't drop, or if it continues to even rise a bit, it's almost certainly a lock for renewal. Indeed, at this point, it's probably a lock for renewal already. I wouldn't be shocked if CBS announces its renewal in the next couple months, if they don't wait for the end of the season. But regardless, I like Limitless. Now, I'm a fan of like Minority Report, I'm a fan of the film this is based off of. I think it's a real underrated gem. I will admit, in my heart of hearts, I kind of wish this didn't exist, or I wish it didn't exist in this form. When I first saw Limitless, if you asked me, did I think it could be turned into a TV series, I'd say sure. I mean, the whole concept of a pill that makes you super smart and changes you and, helps you improve yourself, there's a hook there you could absolutely build an ongoing TV series around. Imagine you're following a group of separate characters who slowly get brought together through the use of the drug, and we get to see different situations. I picture it as maybe something along the lines of a show I liked this year from Netflix, even if I admit it was incredibly flawed, Sense8. Not a great show, not yet, has a lot of problems, but on the other hand, there's nothing else on TV or streaming or anything else like it, and that alone means I have time for it. It's interesting. I'm not sure it's entirely successful, but even as a semi-failure, it's interesting enough I'll stick with it. And I could see a version of Limitless that is a safer, less daring version of Sense8. But that's not what we got. What we got is a version of Limitless that is a procedural. And as I've already said, I've got room in my life for procedurals, but man, do I wish not everything had to be that. And man, do I wish this show in particular hadn't gone that route. I mean, a version of Limitless that is prepared to really dig into the concept and explore all the different facets that are inherent to the idea of a super smart pill. Yeah, that's a show I got all the time in the world for. A version of Limitless where, look, he takes a smart pill, now he fights crime along with his, staid partner who doesn't have a sense of humor. That I'm less excited for. Yeah, when I first heard about Limitless, I was like, oh, Limitless TV series. And then I saw it was a procedural on CBS. There was a part of me that sighed a little, looked out upon the world, contemplated things for a bit, and then moved on with my life because really, a lot of shit to do. But seriously, Limitless, okay, I wish it wasn't quite the show it was, but what do I think of the show it is? It's fun. I like it. Honestly, it's not quite what I wanted, but still, I'm going to stick with it for the long haul. I especially like the fact that in the second and third episode, we've seen a definite sense of humor emerge from the show. I mean, the first episode was I wouldn't call it, it wasn't dark, it wasn't Gotham, it wasn't, too dour or grim, but it was certainly a bit more straight-faced, a bit more serious. These second and third episode have shown a bit more creativity, a bit more inventiveness, a bit more openness to have fun with it, and who knows, I see potential in Limitless. It wouldn't be the first show, especially on CBS, that started out as a bone standard procedural, at least on the surface, but soon evolved into something a lot more. And I am speaking, of course, about Person of Interest. And while I don't think Limitless wants to go as dark and as deep and as smart as Person of Interest has revealed it to be. I mean, Person of Interest has turned into one of the more complex shows on TV. It's amazing. If you're not watching Person of Interest, oh, you are so missing out on this tricky, brilliant show. But Limitless, I do feel like, is a show that maybe along the lines of iZombie, which in its second season is already showing that the procedural element's going to be there. It'll probably always be there, but it's already, as it was late in the last season, it's taking a back seat, or it's just being used to drive the larger plot and the character development. iZombie will probably always be somewhat of a procedural, but it's clear it's got bigger aspirations than just being Law and Order with zombies. And in the same way, I get the sense that Limitless could evolve as well. That it could maybe become more like the show I wish it was, instead of the show it actually is. And hey, even if it doesn't, at least the show it actually is fun. I mean, with its sense of humor, it kind of right now is, I like wacky procedurals that are fun. I enjoy, or a bit willing to not take themselves too seriously. That was why I loved Psych. It's why I enjoyed Burn Notice up until the last season. I mean, I still liked Burn Notice in its last season, but the last season of that show really jettisoned a lot of the fun, I think, somewhat to its detriment. But anyways, it's why I loved Chuck. I like shows like that can take the procedural element but still do fun stuff with it. And I see that potential in Limitless, and because of that, and because I certainly have the room in my schedule, I'm sticking with the show for now. Let's take a different tack now and travel into the world of half-hour shows for a bit, starting with The Muppets. And man, I am the big, I know people know that I'm a big Muppet fan, and I don't get where all the hate for this show is coming from. I remember seeing so much piling on the pilot, and I mean, I'm loving Muppets so far. 3 episodes in, I think what we have here is something that's really true to the heritage of the Muppets, while still doing something new and interesting, and I'm all on board. I mean, I heard people calling Kermit now an asshole, and I'm like, no. I mean, go back to that first episode. Yeah, he's acting a bit jerkish, but he's working with somebody in an incredibly difficult situation. They're trying to make him a bit more complex, a bit more three-dimensional, but also, he still then goes at the end and apologizes to Piggy and tries to make things right. He realized that he was being a little insensitive. And as for Piggy being a jerk, yes, of course Piggy's a jerk. Piggy's always been a jerk. She's always been an unrelenting jerk. Who are you people? How do you claim to know Muppets if you don't get that Piggy is a jerk? I mean, the show has never been subtle about it. Piggy karate chops Kermit. When people call her abusive, they're not really entirely joking. That is Piggy. Piggy is more Piggy than she's ever been Piggy before. Alright, that last statement was a little bit of a reach, I'll grant you, but still, this idea that everybody's acting out of character, well, they're acting slightly different, but that's what you get. And frankly, I'm glad to see a little more depth get brought back to the Muppets. I think, for example, Kermit's just been too much of pure Mr. Nice Guy in recent years. He hasn't had any of the bite, any of the spark that he did. Go back and watch The Muppet Show. He used to fight back. He used to have a bit of a, sarcastic side. He would fire Piggy. He would call out Fozzie when Fozzie did bad jokes. Yes, he was the heart. Yes, he still had optimism. And there is still optimism in this show. But it's balanced out a bit. And if they haven't quite hit the formula completely right, I'm not saying Muppets doesn't have room to grow, but I think this is a very good start. I challenge you, go watch the first season of The Muppet Show. And see how incomplete that was. And see how long it took that show to find its voice. And see how many episodes it took before it really became the series and the characters became the characters we know and love. Well, this is a whole... Yes, now these characters are far more established. But in some ways, that's a double-edged sword. And the creators are still figuring out what does and doesn't work. I see lots of signs of life in the show. I see lots of potential for it to continue to grow. And the idea that the sweetness is all gone... I don't buy it. I don't buy it at all. In these 3 episodes, we have seen still that Kermit cares, that Fozzie is still Fozzie, that Piggy will always be Piggy, but she has just enough, for lack of a better word, humanity to make her tolerable, and so on and so forth. I'm loving Muppets so far, and I'm not alone. My family's loving it. I have a few other, so fine. Those of you who want to hate it, feel free, but me, I'm enjoying the ride. Let's see, what else? In terms of new shows, there was Life in Pieces, aka CBS's desperate attempt to do Modern Family, which is really weird timing considering that, well, it might have made sense to do a Modern Family knockoff a couple years ago when the show was still pretty much winning all the awards and it was still the big, huge, unassailable success in terms of ratings. And while Modern Family ain't doing bad in the ratings, it is clearly not the ratings juggernaut it once was, and it didn't win anything this year, and yeah, this is a really weird time to try and do a Modern Family ripoff. What I can say is this, my family didn't even make it through half an episode before they gave up. I stuck with it a little bit longer because I felt I had to for due diligence, but after 2 episodes, I was done too. It's got a really winning cast. I love a lot of the people in it, but the writing is just so meh. So generic, so been there, done that. I just can't care. So that's Life in Pieces. How about, let's talk about Fox's 2 new comedies, Grandfathered and The Grinder. Let's start with The Grinder. If The Grinder was really wanted to be about what happens when a TV star comes back to his hometown and tries to readjust life, if basically it was all like the first half of the pilot, I'd probably be watching it. But unfortunately, The Grinder also wants to be about a TV lawyer trying to play a real lawyer in a courtroom despite not having any real experience, and that whole concept just sets my teeth on edge. Like, when somebody sticks metal in your teeth, or like tinfoil, you accidentally bite down on it, it's the worst feeling, I just hate it, That is what the second half of the first episode of The Grinder was like for me. So no thanks, I won't be sticking with The Grinder. I love the cast, and if I hear later on they come to their senses and they basically abandon the whole stupid, he's a fake lawyer pretending to be a real lawyer gimmick, I might come back, but no. Grandfathered, meanwhile, I will be staying with. I like John Stamos, for one thing, but also, it's not a revolutionary show. It is a very straightforward sitcom, but already it shows some signs of life and intelligence that does help it stand out a bit from the crowd. And I've got plenty of room in my life for an enjoyable half-hour bit of funny. I like the fact that, for instance, in the first episode, the show didn't mess it about. It didn't drag out the whole question of if he's really the grandfather. It didn't play any of the games it could have played. I like that even the supporting characters feel like they have real life already, even just in their scant amount of screen time. I like the main characters. I like the setup. I like what they're doing with it. I like the show. I can't say I necessarily love it, but I could see myself loving it a few years from now, assuming it sticks around. And in the meantime, I like it. And it's just a little bit of niceness in my life. It's a little bit of amusement. And yeah, I'm going to stick with it for now. Getting back to the hour beat. I didn't watch Heroes Reborn. Nope. I didn't watch the original show. I certainly wasn't going to watch the revival. Sorry. Moving on. The Player from NBC. It's another wacky procedural, and even by the standards of wacky procedurals, this one is lunatic. I mean, This thing is just stupid as mud. It's nuts. How did this show get made? I won't even bother describing it too much, because it's like somebody took Person of Interest and decided to do something utterly ridiculous with it, or play it as a comedy, or and yet I'm going to keep watching, because even though the player is incredibly stupid, it's kind of my sort of stupid. It amuses me. It is not a good show, okay? And I don't really believe in the idea of guilty pleasure, so I won't call it that. But yeah, okay. It amuses me. It amuses me, and that is enough that for now I will stick with it. It is... I kind of like the cast. I like seeing Wesley Snipes. I like our leads. It's bonkers. It's gonzo, not the Muppet. It is ridiculous, and yet that kind of gives it this strange sort of charm. It's all a moot point anyways. Its ratings are fairly terrible, and unless there's a dramatic change, which is unlikely to occur, it will probably be canceled. Maybe it will get to play out its whole season, but if it actually gets a season 2, I will be shocked. But you know what? That, instead of driving me away, that just makes me want to watch it all the more, because now I kind of feel like I'm rooting for the underdog. I'm rooting for this stupid little show to manage to hang on, because it will never be a good show, but I suspect I will never stop being amused by it. We all have shows that we watch that I think, or things that we like that are inexplicable. That's where the term guilty pleasure comes from. I guess this is mine. I'm enjoying it. Let's see, what else can I talk about? Quantico. Ugh. I tried. I really did try, but halfway through, I gave up. I gave up. I mean, it doesn't help that the whole flash forward part is terrible. It just the opening of this show was just like, oh my god, this is so stupid and honestly borderline tasteless and badly done. And even once you get past that, the heart of the show is just, well, it's Shonda Rhimes-esque, but in FBI, and just not my cup of tea. It's got a pretty good cast, but no. I mean, it's a huge hit, so it hardly needs me to support it, but I won't be sticking with it, so there is that. Let's move on. Let's talk about a returning show, Sleepy Hollow. Boy, is it a miracle this thing is still on, and I think it knows it. It's amazing. The first season of Sleepy Hollow was glorious. It in some ways, it was like The Player, only better. I mean, in that, it had an utterly ludicrous concept, but it actually kind of earned that concept. It was ridiculous, but it was fun. And I really loved it, and especially carried by its 2 leads, it was just yes. And then it all went off the fucking rails in season 2 to a degree that is rare to see. It's amazing. It's just, it was like the creators had no idea what they were doing anymore. It was like they'd all gotten hit on the head by hammers and had all forgotten how to create a basic, competent TV show. Everything you could do wrong, they managed to do wrong, and it was kind of remarkable. It was fascinating in a oh my god, slack-jawed horror sort of way, but I backed out. I once you start wasting John Noble, he who is of the greats, I mean, once you're wasting him, there's no hope for you. And yeah, I watched the last episode last season, I was like, oh Jesus, wow. This is a show desperately trying to clear the board so it can restart next season. And indeed, that is what we got with the season premiere. I enjoyed the season premiere, certainly a lot more than I did, I think, anything in season 2. But it's probably not a good sign that until right now, basically, when I'm looking at the premiere calendar and going over what to talk about, I forgot there was a new episode tonight. So I haven't actually watched the second episode. That probably says a lot about my state of mind regarding this show. If I can't even remember it's on, yeah. I am going to go back and watch it. The ratings are not good at this point. I will say that if the show is going to be able to salvage itself, it's taking steps in the right direction for the most part. I'm not really sure we needed the whole, weird Betsy Ross thing. That feels like an odd divergence, but okay. I'm intrigued, I guess, by the setup for the Big Bad. That could work, and at least it's a different take, a different idea. I'm glad that we've gotten rid of a lot of the detritus. We're refocusing the show on what really matters. Our 2 leads, plus the sister, they're the ones you want to build the show around. I don't know. I think maybe Sleepy Hollow could salvage itself, but I fear it will be too late in terms of it getting a season 4. But at the very least, I'd like it to go out, if this is the last season, to go out on a better note than season 2. It deserves better than that, at least. So I guess we will see. I'll talk real quick about The Leftovers. This continues to remain one of the most challenging shows on TV. I totally understand why, if you don't like this show, you don't watch it. The first season of The Leftovers was at times very difficult to get through. It is, it is so dark, and it's dark in a way that is earned, in a way that feels far more real than any of the, nasty surface nihilism of something like The Walking Dead. And don't even fucking ask me about Fear the Walking Dead. That's all I gotta say about that. You want to know my thoughts on Fear the Walking Dead? My thoughts are, shut up. I don't want to talk about it. That's how much... Ugh. Leftovers. First episode, very intriguing, very interesting. Love the new credits. Interested in where we're going. There's nothing else on TV like this, which is probably a good thing, because I don't think I can watch more than one show like this. I'd probably end up being suicidal otherwise. But man, I'm with this show. I'm with it all the way. That's going to be pretty much it, except for the big main event reason we're here today. I don't think I've missed anything important. I didn't. This wasn't. I did watch the first episode of Dr. Kin. It was terrible, just terrible. Wasted cast, wasted everybody. This did okay, I guess, but it's awful. It's just, not even awful in an entertaining way, just awful in a way. There was the Doctor Who premiere, but I'm gonna wait to talk about Doctor Who. I want to give that an episode of its own. And beyond that, I don't think you guys really care what I think about NCIS, New Orleans, or LA. I don't think you really care what I think about The Big Bang Theory. Yes, I watched The Big Bang Theory. No, it's not my favorite comedy, but I don't think it's nearly as bad as people make it out to be. There's a lot worse shows on TV. I don't think you care. I mean, I watched half an episode of Rosewood and then immediately deleted and turned it off because it was too generic for its own good, and chances are you don't even know what Rosewood is. You probably don't even remember it. So there you go. Yeah, pretty mediocre fall, but okay. Let's talk about the 3 superhero shows. Let's begin with Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which has now aired 2 episodes. I've been a fan of this show since the beginning. I won't deny the first half of Season 1 had its issues, had its problems, but in retrospect, it was a show finding itself, and it was still ended up being a lot better first season once they kicked off the big twist than a lot of shows have had. I will still say that the last half of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was better than anything in the first seasons of, say, Star Trek The Next Generation, or Star Trek Voyager, or Buffy the Vampire Slayer, or a whole host of other genre shows I could name. Season 2 was very interesting, started to deepen things, and when they finally revealed that, yep, they really were pulling the Inhumans trigger, I got excited. It ended on a really interesting note, and I like where it's picked up. The show continues to reinvent itself from season to season, and that's a good thing, but first of all, the first episode was clearly a lot of table setting, but still entertaining table setting, and I've seen a lot worse. I would say that it definitely was promising, and it's continued to show that with the second episode. Bringing in Peter McNichol is never a bad thing indeed. I think we should pass a law that he has to be on every TV show ever. No, he just has to show up on all of them. All of them, because there's nothing he doesn't make better. There's nothing not improved by his presence. That doesn't mean he can save a show. He can't. There's a lot of stuff he's been on that he can't save. Nope. He couldn't save CSI Cyber, but he at least makes things better, and it was fun to see him on S.H.I.E.L.D. again, and it was especially since they played him a little darker this time around, because the show itself is a little darker, and it even comments on that, and I'm curious to see. I mean, I'm hoping they haven't made a mistake by basically writing out the whole monolith thing and the other planet thing seemingly by the end of episode 2, but I'm assuming we're not done yet. And, I mean, obviously I think we're going to get some flashbacks to her time on that planet, because clearly bad things are happening to her there. But I think it's going to go deeper than that. I would imagine, I'd be shocked if we don't eventually go back somehow for some reason, just because why else did we set this on an alien world? But beyond that, yeah, I think Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. has really started to find itself. It really feels like it has a place. It is part of a larger universe, but it still has its own ground that it's carved out for itself. I don't know, is it the best show on TV? No, but it's a good show, even a great one. I'm very excited to see where we go this season. There's a lot of interesting elements that have been set up, and I'm curious to see where we go from there. Like Ward, we are setting up for a big showdown with Ward. I gotta admit, look, I get it. People love the bad boy and the wooby, but I mean, at some point, when you continue to root for the character who hasn't just crossed the moral horizon, the line, who hasn't just crossed the line, he's obliterated it, he's scorched all the earth behind him and everybody who was standing on it, in this case, literally, because remember, he burned down his house with his family inside. I mean, even if they were crappy family at times, they probably still didn't deserve to actually be killed like that. I mean, he's not a character. At this point, I'm assuming we're never going to get the redemption of Ward. I'd be shocked if we did, and I'd probably be really upset if they tried to pull that shit. But, okay, people love him. Ward's Warriors and all that. And don't get me wrong, I love the character. I really like what they've done with him. I think that Brett Dalton has shown himself between this and his pretty damn good turn in Until Dawn, that, the early critiques of him being this awful actor weren't fair at all, that he was playing the character the way he was supposed to be playing it. And he definitely brings a kind of, I guess, charisma to the part. You believe this guy could be rebuilding this organization and that these people would follow him loyally. And I'm curious to see where we go from there, because we seem to be setting up for a major showdown between him and May again, and do they kill off Ward? I don't know, but how long can they actually leave him out there? It's curious, and it's the kind of setup that you wonder, do they have the guts to pull that kind of trigger? And then you look back over the first two seasons and you're like, oh yeah, actually they do. They really do. So nobody is really kind of safe, and as much as I don't like character killing as a fallback position, I think you should be very hesitant when you do that. I will admit it has certainly raised the tension levels overall in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I'm curious to see where we go. We still are clearly in these setup stages for this season. I mean, this is supposed to be the season of the Secret Warriors, and basically we don't even have that. I mean, they're not a team yet. They're arguably two people if you count Mac. Since he doesn't have superpowers beyond being utterly badass, I don't know if he does count. He does in my heart, at least. But basically, it's just Daisy, and isn't that interesting? It's basically just Daisy with other people apparently waiting in the wings. So, yeah, clearly a lot more development coming from that. We'll see where they go with Lincoln. I'm not as down on Lincoln as some people are, but I'm certainly not overly fond of him either. If Lincoln hadn't returned for Season 3, I would have been okay with that. But, okay, next episode's going to be a Lincoln-focused episode. Apparently, maybe the show can really win people over with it. I hope they can. Otherwise, we're just going to be stuck with a mildly meh character. But there's enough good going on S.H.I.E.L.D. It can tolerate it, I guess. So that's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I think Season 3 is off to a great start, and I'm definitely still on board. This week now, for the main event, The Flash and Arrow. Let's start with The Flash. Boy, was this a setup episode. I mean, was this ever a setup episode? To the point that did we really need to go through so much trouble? I mean, this wasn't a bad episode, but it wasn't really a great one either. It was okay. I mean, tempered by the fact that it's been a while since we got a new episode of The Flash because of the end of the season, and it's just fun and good to see these characters again. But, there were elements that you just felt like were busy work. Like, did we really need to have Caitlin and another lab? Did we really need to kill off who we killed off, apparently? I mean, but they did, and by the end of the episode, things have been more or less put together. I will call utter bullshit on the development with Barry's father. No, I don't. The idea that he might need to get away, that after being in jail unjustly for so many years, that he might not just be able to settle back into normal life, and that maybe he'd need to travel for a bit or find himself. Okay, I could believe that, but the idea that he thinks being directly in Barry's life is going to prevent him from being a hero? What you talking about, Willis? I mean, seriously, guys. Come on, writers. You could do better than that. I just named a credible reason. You say, well, it was your mother's and I's dream to travel the world, and now that I'm out, I need to make that dream come true, but I also need to do it for myself because I need to get out. I need to get away from this city for a time. I love you, son, but if I stay, I'm just going to go crazy. There's too much pain, too much bad memories there, so I need to go away for a while, but if you need me, I'll be there. I would have been fine with that, but him saying, you need me to not be around so you can be a hero is just eye-rollingly no. Still, aside from that, this was a perfectly decent setup. I'm glad to see that already we've made Iris a stronger part of the team, and I'm hopeful. I'm legitimately hopeful we are not going to avoid the mistake. We are going to avoid the mistakes made last season with her. That we're not going to see a repeat of useless, awful Iris. She now knows, and that is clearly for the best of the series. There's a lot of dangling plot threads that clearly need to be dealt with, not least of which, well, wait, if time changed, did it change? But there's time for that. They have the whole season to explore all that. I'm curious to see what we do with Zoom. It's an interesting choice to go with Zoom, who's basically just a version of Reverse Flash after Reverse Flash was the lead villain for Season 1. I'm going to give the writers the benefit of the doubt and assume they know where they're going with this. Of course, it was cool to see Jay Garrick show up at the end. I'm very excited for next episode, which is clearly where I think the season really begins. The Flash of Two Worlds. You don't get more classic Flash than that. He seems like he'll be a perfectly decent fit. I'm a little sad that we killed off Atom Smasher after one appearance. I mean, I really like Adam Copeland, a.k.a. Edge. I've always enjoyed him, and I think he's a decent actor, actually, and he could have made a good reoccurring foil, especially since the character he's playing was actually a good guy in the comics, so you could have eventually given him a redemption arc, and maybe we will. I mean, we are talking alternate realities, so maybe he's not completely done, but it looks like he is, and that's a little unfortunate. I think it's a bit of a waste of a character who could have been more interesting. Ah, well, so it goes. Still, as setup episodes go, you could do a lot worse, and at least where we leave things off at the end of the episode is interesting. I'm certainly on board for more adventures with the Scarlet Speedster. Now for Arrow. To say the least, Arrow Season 3 was a misstep. Pretty much across the board. After what was an amazing second season where it felt like everything had come together and the show was revving up on all fronts, Season 3 just dropped the ball, and not least of which because the person chosen, Matt Nable, to play Ra's al Ghul was hideously, horribly miscast, had all the charisma of a wooden log, and I'm not saying if a better actor could have saved Season 3, but he certainly could have made it better. But alright, with this episode, this is also in a lot of ways a setup episode, but I think it's a better setup episode than The Flash, and more importantly, I think it accomplishes what it needs to do, which is to make it clear to all of us that things have changed. And that going forward, Arrow will be at least on some level a different show. That we are not just going to get a retread yet again of the same endless angst, the same plot lines, the same, just with different costumes, different players. There is a definite different tone to this season. And it's obviously represented by the fact that at last, Oliver has put aside the fake names and has truly become the Green Arrow. And yeah, already we have in Damien Dark a villain who in one scene was more interesting, more compelling, more exciting, more fun to watch than the entire season of Matt Nable as Ra's al Ghul put together. So we have a very strong lead in the role for the Big Bad, which is a promising start. We have a lot of the characters in entry positions. It's really fun seeing as Speedy, a.k.a. Red Arrow. She's already clearly, the actress is clearly having a lot of fun, and I'm enjoying seeing her in it. I think that at this point, Canary has established herself enough that it's believable to have her be part of the team. The tension between Diggle and Ollie is believable. Hopefully that'll get resolved before too long. I'm not thrilled that the flashback is back, and I'm not thrilled that we're back on that damn island. I mean, look, I know he was always going to end up back on that island eventually because of how the series started. But that doesn't mean we need to see it. And I guess I'll try and give them the benefit of the doubt. But at this point, I really don't think we need the flashbacks anymore. They were a useful tool in the first two seasons, but they became a crutch that held the show back in Season 3. At the very least, I know we don't need them every episode. They should only be used when appropriate, and maybe they'll do that. I don't hold out much hope, though, based on this. Oh, well, hopefully this season they'll have more relevance, and they won't be such the pointless time waster that they were in Season 3. Flash forward, no pun intended. Interesting. Somebody's going to die. Certainly the implication is it's Felicity. I have my doubts. I don't know. We will see. At this point, it's a tease. It's a very deliberate, cruel tease meant to make us go, what? What? And in that sense, it's very effective, and I'm curious to see. But it's also meant to establish that the other important thing to take away is not just that somebody died, it's how Ollie reacts. It's that, yes, somebody died, but Ollie hasn't automatically gone into angst mode. And that's important. That is a clear sign. That is the show telling us, the audience, that, look, Ollie has grown, he has changed, and even when bad things happen, he's not just going to fall back into old patterns. He really has changed, and by extension, show us the show. And that's good, because there's only so long you could keep that whole endless angst thing going. You needed to find a better balance. Other developments, I'm not quite sure what they're doing with Detective Lance, and I'm not quite thrilled with what they seem to be applying. His character in general, I love the actor playing him, but God damn it, at some point his self-righteous anger... Last season, his self-righteous anger annoyed the shit out of me. This season, it's just like, dude, he's been gone. And FYI, these people would be attacking the city with or without him, so blaming everything on him is just bullshit. But yes, I get that's supposed to be the point, but there's a lot... I've talked about before. There's good heat and bad heat. And bad heat is go-away heat, and you don't want go-away heat, and Lance is dangerously close to that territory. Maybe he's the one who dies. We'll see, whatever. I still feel like this is a big step up from Season 3. I already feel like we're on stronger ground. We know the crossover, sort of, or the guest appearance, whatever you want to call it, with Constantine is coming. Damien Dark has already a more compelling villain than last season's, and I think we are off to a good start, and that's pretty much all I can ask for. So, that is going to do it for this episode of Ramblings. There will definitely be more TV talk in the future. Coming down the pipeline, this Monday we have the premiere of Fargo. And then next week we have got Crazy... we have Crazy Ex-Girlfriend and Jane the Virgin returning, so you're absolutely bet I'm going to be covering those. Then on the 26th we have the premiere of Supergirl, absolutely 100% covering that. And then Halloween, October 31st, Ash versus the Evil Dead. And I'm so excited for that. And then November, we've got Jessica Jones. And so a lot of plenty of good TV coming. And we've got Elementary, which I'll save to talk about another day. Once again, let me just restate, just so I can piss somebody of you off. Elementary is better than Sherlock. It's better than Sherlock. It will always be better than Sherlock. It is the show Sherlock wishes it was, but never could be. Yeah, I said it. I think that. I believe it. Deal with it. You can argue with me about Elementary later. I'm going to devote more time to it another episode once we get the premiere actually in November. Regardless, I intend to check back in regularly with a number of shows that I talked about this time. Limitless, the superhero shows. Maybe not every week, but certainly when big things happen or as things continue to develop. Please, if you can, if you would, leave a review and rating of this on iTunes if you're watching it via that method. It really does help the show. It helps get it out there. It helps get more attention, more eyes, more ears. I need all I can get. Also, be sure to head over to unrepentantgeeking.com to see the rest of what I'm doing. October is turning into a very busy month for me. I am doing every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday a Monstrous October Returns, taking a look at various monsters and similar Halloween-inspired elements to celebrate the best holiday and the best month of the year. I'm working so hard, I'm starting to lose my voice a little, but don't worry, I'm going to keep on pushing through. So, we're already almost full through the first full week of A Monstrous October, so you got 4 full episodes. First, a look at the 2 Hotel Transylvania films, and then a whole week devoted to Ghostbusters. Next week, I'm going to be seeing what happens when good heroes go bad. So lots of fun stuff coming down the line. Also, look for another episode of Ramblings, hopefully this weekend, where I take a look at a number of the new Marvel releases. All new, all different Marvel has begun, and I definitely have some things to say about the relaunches, about the one-shots, even about Secret Wars a bit more. And yeah, I'll address what happened to the monthly Secret Wars then as well, so look for that this Saturday or Sunday. And just stay tuned, please. Again, head over to unrepentantgeeking.com. Also, if you want to drop a little October treat my way, if you could, if you would, you can head on over to www.patreon.com/unrepentantgeeking. Even a couple dollars a month helps keep the lights on, and I will be very appreciative. I'll be your best friend. Okay, no, I won't be your best friend, but I'll definitely think nice thoughts your way, which can't hurt anybody. And at the $20 level, you can get me to review whatever terrible, wonderful thing you want me to review. You want me to put me through hell? Well, that's your way to do so. All right. Until next time then, for Unrepentant Geeking, I am Shaun Cronenfeld, wishing you all long days and pleasant nights.